Okay, now let's code insertion sort. We'll pick up where we left off in the last video with this list. I'll shrink this down here and we'll start writing our function. So we'll say insertion sort, we pass it this list, and we'll start out with this for loop. The range goes 1 to the end of the list. And remember, we're always going to start at the index of 1, that second item in the list. Then we're going to need a variable to hold the value of that item. So we'll say temp equals my list at the index of I. So we're going to compare that to the item before it. We'll call this J. Since that's the index before, we can just say J equals I minus 1. And because that 2 is greater than the 1, we're just going to put that there. The first time we have an item that is going to be less than the item before it is going to be this 3. So let's just skip ahead to that. And because J equals I minus 1, we'll put the J there. So we're going to have a while loop here that says while temp is less than my list at the index of J, the index of J is going to be that 4, and temp is going to be 3. So we're going to say while temp is less than my list at the index of J, and that is less than in this case, the first thing we're going to do is move that 4 over into that open spot. So we'll say my list, J plus 1 is equal to my list at the index of J. That moves that over. Then we want that 3 to be moved over into the index of J, like this. So we'll say my list at the index of J is now equal to temp. So the value at that index is now going to be equal to 3. Then we need to move that J over 1 to point at that 2, like that. We'll do that with this line of code. J minus equals 1, we'll decrement that by 1. Then we come up here and run the while loop again. So now is temp less than my list at the index of J. So in this case, it is not, and that's going to break us out of this while loop, and we'll just leave that index equal to 3. So there is an edge case that we need to talk about. I talked about this a little bit in the last video. And to explain that, I'm going to exchange the 1 and the 2 here, like this. And then I'll walk through what's going to happen with the code as it is written if we move that 1 over. So we would start here with the 1. J would be the item before that. And then we run through the while loop and say, is temp less than my list at the index of J? It is. So we'll move the 2 over, and then this line of code is going to move the 1 over, and then this line, J minus equals 1, is going to have J pointing at the index of negative 1. And this is where the problem is. You don't want this to keep moving over. You want the loop to stop as soon as J is ever equal to negative 1. So we need to add something to the conditional in our while loop. So we'll say, and J has to be greater than negative 1. And now because J is equal to negative 1, that breaks us out of our while loop. We stop running this code, and then we just leave that index to have that value of 1. So now all of that code works. The only thing left to do is to return the list. So now let's take this list at the bottom and unorder it again. And then we'll go take a look at this code and this list in VS Code. So there is the insertion sort function here. And then down here, we'll run insertion sort on our list and we'll print out the results. So I'll run this, and that gives us our sorted list 1 through 6. And it looks like we have a working function for insertion sort.